Your someday starts today. It's time to explore and test the newest science, methods, and trends for creating a life you love with your host, Tanyamfk. Welcome to My Designed Life.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to My Design Life, where we learn and test the latest science, tips, tools, and strategies for you to create your best life every day. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram at My Design Life Show and at Tanyamfk. And if watching videos isn't your thing, head over to our My Design Life Show podcast and catch the audio. I'm Tanyamfk, and I am so glad that you're here. In today's show, we are going to talk about the myth of cultural diversity and how to get along better with others using uncommon sense to connect with people and create business success. So let's dive in.
Welcome to My Designed Life.
My guest today lost his first business the same way that 99% of failed businesses do, and that's business growth leading to discourse, miscommunications, and discontent with your team. Realizing that speaking the same language, qualifications, common sense, and good intentions were not enough to make it work, and learning that many leaders and entrepreneurs were struggling with the same issue, he has spent the last 15 years cracking the code of why people think and behave differently and how to turn those differences into successful business asset instead of a liability. Taking the complex topic of cultural intelligence and leadership and putting it into a practical and measurable method using neuroscience, personality, and intercultural models, he created the multi-award-winning ICF-accredited behavioral model, Global DISC. His solutions have been used by Fortune 500 companies, national governments, and universities all over the world. Here today to teach us how to use uncommon sense to create success, please welcome founder of ICQ Global, Csaba Toth. Welcome so much, Csaba.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
So this topic is seemingly complex, and I'm not going to pretend to fully understand it yet. So I would really love for you to just kind of take over and help us understand really the problem that you discovered and the solution a little more.
Okay. So the topic itself is called cultural intelligence, and it's a very trendy topic. If you think about diversity and inclusion, then a lot of big companies riding the wave of let's be more diverse, and then we can take a picture and it looks good on the website.
Right. It's the buzzword.
Yes. And the assumption is that it's good for the business. But I think a lot of companies talk about diversity and inclusion like teenagers talk about sex, that, yeah, I'm really good at it. And maybe they mean it or they want to believe it, but it might not be completely true. And often when people ask me what I do exactly, then I just say, I teach common sense. And people think, what's wrong with you?
Right.
But then you just have to explain it because you ask the next question. Have you ever felt when you were talking to someone that, oh, that person has no common sense at all, they just don't get me? And most people say, yeah, so many times. I think, have you ever thought that they felt the same way about you, but for a different reason? No, and then silence. And that's the point, that cultural differences are just clashes of common senses. It's not a binary option, who is right or who is wrong. Right. Because when you disagree with me, then the default position is that I'm right, you're wrong, obviously. Mm-hmm. But if we have the right mentality, the global mindset or ICQ mindset, and we have that kind of trust and psychological safety between us, then we can ask the right questions. Because I assume that you say that you're right because you think you're right. So how about asking, what can you see that I cannot? What do you know that I don't? If you're able to ask these questions instead of trying to protect our ego at all costs, then we can learn from each other. And this is when diversity can lead to innovation instead of painful liability. But our brain is not designed to see the world from different perspectives. We have to learn.
We've learned self-protection. That's what we learned, protection and preservation. And they said our mind, I was reading something that said our mind is geared to protect us, like to protect the ego, even to the point that if you can't find your keys and you say to yourself, I can't find my keys, and you're holding your keys and you're like, I don't know where my keys are. I actually read that your brain will even release like the nerves in your hands to not feel your keys as much, to protect that ego, to protect that thought process. Like it really is about this, like, I gotta be right more than helping us in the things we actually need. Because the goal would be to find the keys, right? But our brain is like, oh, well, if you say you can't find it, I gotta make sure that stays true because we gotta protect the ego. So it's so something that we're naturally geared towards is to make sure that we're right, not so much getting along with others.
Exactly. And that's the next question I usually ask. Do you want to be right or you want the truth? Because that might not be the same. But you need to be confident and a skill to be able to ask that question. And like you said, your mind loves consistency. Yeah. So you cannot outperform your self-image. And that's the problem sometimes, that we really insist on being right and we just dismiss the truth around us.
Which keeps us from growing.
Yes, but your brain was designed to keep you safe.
Right.
And to procreate. It's not designed to make you happy. And that's the problem. It's trying to keep us in our comfort zone because change is dangerous. But the problem is that it's almost like a paradox. Because if you try to refuse change and you try to protect the status quo, but the world is changing around you, then technically you are endangering the very thing that you want to protect, because the gap is getting bigger and bigger until you get to that breaking point where you have to do something. Yes. So maybe it makes much more sense to evolve gradually and expand. And that's why we talk about leveling up, which is coming from the gaming industry. That, you know, when you play a video game, then you have little challenges and then you have to overcome them. And at the end, there's a big monster that you have to kill using all your skills, and then you can move on to the next one.
Right.
If you don't kill the monster, you do it again.
You just start all over again.
Exactly. And this is what a lot of people do. They don't learn the lesson, they don't learn new skills, and they're just running in circles. They stay on the same level constantly. And that's why we're talking about leveling up.
Yes, yes, I love this. So, I mean, it again goes back to that kind of that mind protection, like you're talking about, like refusing change. I love the old quote, you know, the only constant, it's a Buddhist quote, the only constant you can bank on is change. Yeah. The only constant in life is change, that'll always be different. So if you're finding yourself stuck, I always tell people, like, you're actively creating that, because naturally everything around you is changing, is growing. So if you're like, I feel so stuck, there are things you're putting in place to actually keep you there. Because if you went with it, let's say, go with the flow, as it were, you would actually change and evolve in certain ways. Maybe not as directive and concise as where you want to go, but you would change in one way or the other, because that's the natural evolution of life and existence. So when you're finding yourself stuck, you're really doing things to keep yourself there. And like you're saying, not only may we be consciously doing things, but unconsciously, that's what our brain is triggered to do, is to keep us in that comfort zone. And that's why no matter how many times you may say, I want to go work out, tomorrow is the day. And you're like, that's it. And then tomorrow your brain's like, no, we don't, that's not what we do. We don't like this. Remember, you've told me for 5 years, you don't like this. So we're going to stay not going to the gym. Right. Exactly. So, so we take this concept and we're actually lacking this understanding in business, right? In a lot of businesses. That's what you found. Is that right?
Maybe I can tell you how I started the company, I think, because it sums up the topic itself.
Yeah.
So I studied, my second master's is from the University of Sussex. And the dissertation was about the implications in Eastern and Western European joint ventures. So it's quite specific. And I replicated an old research, and I wanted to compare the Hungarian managers with the Western Europeans. But the trick was that in Hungary, we had two generations, the one that grew up in communism and the new generation that was affected by it indirectly. Right. And the data showed that the gap between the two generations was much bigger than the gap between the new generation and Western Europeans, which was weird because it contradicted to everything that we learned about what all the academics claimed, that culture is country-specific and stable. So no, look at the numbers, that's not true. But who are you? Just a student. Right. So, those models have been around for 40, 50 years, so don't challenge the status quo. That's not polite. So
we don't like change.
No. Especially not in academia.
Right, right.
No.
Talk about protecting egos.
Of course. So I forgot about it. And then as soon as I finished, I started my own company, which was a restaurant booking site. The business model is pretty simple. You book a table, we get the money. The idea behind it was much more exciting. But we started with 35 restaurants here in Brighton. And in 1 year, we had 5,500 all over the UK. Wow. It was the fastest growing and biggest restaurant chain. But it also became a joint venture with a software company. And this is where it went wrong. Because on paper, everything made sense. We were getting the results. But on a personal level, I just couldn't work with the other CEO.
Ah.
He was French. I'm not saying that was a problem, but definitely I couldn't work with him. And we got to the point where we had to get out of the business. We sold the shares. It's still online, but I just had to leave.
Yeah.
And this is what I didn't understand. How come the department where I studied is #1 in the world in its category? I had years of experience. That was the exact topic of my dissertation. And I couldn't put that theory into practice. What went wrong? So I started my research and I got certified in a lot of different things, in psychometric assessments, in CBT, NLP, leadership models, interculture models. And the research was really interesting, and it revealed a few problems. That, for example, more than 80% of cultural differences exist within countries, not between them. But often people assume that this is a topic for international leaders and global businesses. No, it's not true.
Right.
But that's also good news, because you have more experience than you realize. But if you have a conflict with someone from your own country, then you call it personal differences. The exact same thing happens to you with someone from a different country. You call it cultural differences.
Right.
Different label, but the same problem.
So interesting.
And if you go deeper, then in the training industry, you have different models and solutions, but most of them were created in the 60s or 70s based on the result from people who, but technically a lot of them are already dead. They grew up without European Union, without internet, without international TV, and we are using that data to address the new challenges. And if you look at the statistics, companies spend more and more on the same solutions, expecting different results, which technically they are getting because the numbers are getting worse. But that's not what they want. And it's true that we love our great-grandparents, but we have different challenges and they require different solutions.
We're in a much global world, interconnected world now as well.
Exactly. And that's why I said in the beginning that speaking the same language doesn't mean that we understand each other. I mean, if you ever had a conflict with your parents or your kids, you know exactly that you just cannot believe that you talk about the same situation. Your perspective is so different.
No, I love that you said that, because when I was reading that statement about speaking the same languages, in my head, I actually was thinking about people who actually speak the same languages, like, oh, I'm saying this and you're saying that. But you're saying, you know, even from a global's perspective, you know, looking at people and cultural diversity, you know, you speak, you know, examples go, we speak, you know, Czech here and you speak Hungarian. We have, you know, just because we both speak Czech doesn't make it any easier, just because they both speak Hungarian. So that is like you're really specifically talking about like even language when we come to that cultural part. And just like you said, like, I mean, speaking with my own parents, talk about the difference of what we understand and what we're trying to say. Absolutely. Myself as an American coming from California, just our own lingo and things that we say, like on that simple, like obvious level, let alone any nuances and what's behind it, right? So there's so much. And I love, so what you're saying is that like you've noticed within the same culture, there's a bigger gap of understanding than even so that there was when you compared to people from two different countries.
Yeah, and there's this very simple reason, because for many people, culture equals nationality, the country of origin, and it's way beyond that. I mean, it's just one of many cultural groups we belong to.
Yeah.
That's your gender, your generation, your profession, your educational level, a lot of different things. So for example, last time I read, I think it was an article on LinkedIn, and somebody said, I'm an intercultural coach or something like that. And it made me think, is there a coach or leader who is not intercultural? Because imagine that you talk to someone, what are the chances that that person belongs to the same 15 or 20 culture groups like you? It's next to zero. So every single conversation is a cross-cultural dialogue. But most people are not aware of it. So they are not actively looking for the solution that would unlock the potential within and between people.
Right.
And that's the problem. Because for them, it's for big businesses, international companies.
Right.
It's not true, because if you employ or serve more than one person, it's already multicultural, even if it's not international.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I find that even myself with my own business and with my clients, you know, just working within different industries, and those industries come with their own passions and thought processes, and then the individual within those industries still have different thoughts and ideas. And I have a large client that I work with right now that works within martial arts, and even though there's a ton of information about martial arts, their particular beliefs, say about Wing Chun, which is a specific type of practice, I have to be very mindful to make sure that I'm understanding exactly what they believe and what components they have that they hold on to about this, as opposed to going, well, this is what's out there on the internet, everyone thinks the same. It's absolutely not. And they're actually part of, it's a temple that I work with. So this is 5,000 years of history, and they still have perhaps a different view than another temple or another group. So I absolutely see that. So this is really where you've come into finding this. You discovered it within your own business, losing that business kind of due to the issues and the lack of, not so much lack of communication, but ability to understand each other, regardless of speaking the same language. Not necessarily just because of the culture differences, because you did mention, he's French, you're Hungarian, you're living in UK, so you do have those differences, but it wasn't so much that, right? It was more kind of where you guys were, how you were communicating, or what would you say was the biggest takeaway from that, issue that you found from that?
I mean, if you look at the intercultural field, then usually they talk about country of origin or nationalities, and that's based on the average score of a group. But so far, every time I spoke to someone, I asked them if they were statistically average nationals. They said no. So what do you think that other people are? I mean, it's naive. It doesn't make sense. But of course, culture is what we are used to, not who we are.
Right.
So, when you grow up in a country, even if you're very different, you learn how to navigate in that environment. And that becomes normal. But what if you are very different? What's natural to you? And that's the distinction between what is natural to you and what is normal to you within your environment. And that gap can be really big. But if you are very different to that normal, then you're going to conform to the norms. But that would require a lot of energy. So you spend a lot of energy on being like them. So there's not much left to focus on the task itself. And you feel like an outsider, especially if you're a teenager or you're in your own country. You look around, everybody behaves similarly. You feel like an outsider, but you still have to pretend to be like them. And you think, oh, something is wrong with me, or I'm broken. And you never realize that they might have exactly the same problem, but in their eyes, you look similar to everybody else as well.
Right.
And that doesn't mean that we are broken or something is wrong with us. It's just we have to understand that culture is almost like a cognitive bubble where most things make sense. And that's why we stick to it.
Yeah.
So the crazier the world gets, the more we crave for certainty, something we are familiar with.
Right.
And that's why we shut down and we stick to what we know, and we amplify it, and we try to ignore the world. But real confidence is when it's not that you know everything, but you know that whatever happens, you can deal with it.
Right.
But that requires flexibility.
Well, and what you said earlier about, if someone disagrees with us or we disagree with them, we don't ask ourselves, well, what do you know that's different? No. What do you know? And I can see how in a cultural diversity, in the sense of two different origins, two different countries, we're more apt to do that because we can immediately see oh, well, this person's from there. Maybe they do it differently. We're quicker to perhaps notice that difference. Yeah. Whereas when it's within us, that same, something similar, we're well, come on, we're from the same place. You're obviously just being a jerk. You're obviously just don't get it. We're quicker to dismiss it than we would be otherwise. And so it makes sense why there could be so much of more of a gap, between that understanding. So now that we're here, now that we've kind of identified the root of this, you've done a lot of work to now reverse this, but bring in a whole new concept into this interpersonal connection, right? Tell us a little about that.
To me, intercultural equals interpersonal. It's the same thing. I mean, often trainers claim that you cannot compare personality and culture. And it's true. If you look at the surface level, then you cannot. If you look at the cognitive level, yes, you can. Indeed, you have to. Because you have some underlying values and psychological needs inside of you. And your behavior reflects your values and supports your needs, ideally. That's why you do what you do, unless your environment forces you to behave differently.
Right.
That's why we do what we do, which is completely normal. And here's the question. Your behavior is driven by those values and those needs. And then your environment accepted something as normal. So what is that level? We can measure that gap. But the underlying values and drivers are exactly the same. And that's the reason why we can compare it. And when we talk about trust, again, it's a fancy topic and a lot of people talk about trust, but when you do a workshop and you ask them, so how would you define trust? What's your definition? How do you know you can trust someone? And usually there is silence, or because they are reliable. Said, I mean, if somebody wants to mug you and they put a gun to your head, it's quite reliable. You know exactly what's going to happen. Will you trust them? Right. Oh, no. Okay, so there's more to that. So, sometimes we use words, but we never stop for a second to think about what it means exactly. Absolutely. And that's the problem, that we don't have the same vision. We don't have the same foundation. We just assume that the other person comes to the same conclusion like us, even though they have completely different expertise and experience. Not to mention the fact that 95% of our actions are based on unconscious bias, driven by values and beliefs we are not even aware of.
Yes.
But we think that we are objective and logical, which is not true. But when you look into coaching, they often suggest, oh, you should just reflect on things. But it doesn't matter how much you reflect on how to say good night in Russian if you don't speak Russian. You just don't know.
Right.
You need this knowledge. You need the blueprint. You need the concept. And then you can reflect on it. Not until then. Right. And I think that's the difference. Because
Well, I was going to say, I love how you said, like, we kind of assume that, so they have the same ideas, they have the same thoughts, and because they're there with us, and we don't really think about the words or the differences. And I know for myself, being a grown adult, it wasn't really until the last couple of years for a lot of my friends that I grew up in high school with, and what you see on TV, like, and this isn't a friendship situation, but that I assumed we all like the same thing because we were friends. And of course, you're in school, like grade school, you don't think really as deeply. We're both in the same classroom, now we're friends. So as we grew up together, and now adults and parents and different things, in my head, I was still left with this kind of childlike mentality that, we were all so similar. And so I began to become really surprised as we got older. And I learned that even certain music I liked that my friends didn't like. And I was like, wait, I always thought you liked that group. Because when we were in one certain situation, everyone went with the flow and came up to the environment and stuck to be the same. And as we got older, you start to go, wow, there's so much. Like, we are actually really different. We have very different things, which is, in one sense, as I say this, and I think when people hear it, they're like, well, duh, of course, we're all different. But we don't really think about that. We don't actually, we have this assumption that it's all in the same place. So I absolutely resonated with that. And as a grown adult, I'm really so surprised that I'm just starting to learn this. So yeah, so it's so interesting. So then what do we do? So you basically figured out the blueprint.
But yes, I mean, what you described there is a really good example, because technically you didn't know each other. You conform to the same norms.
Yes.
And of course, that's the same.
Absolutely.
And this is what corporate culture is the behavior that you reward and punish. That is it. It's not the big mission statements that we believe in people and innovation, and then somebody makes a mistake and then you punish them. There's a big disconnect there. That doesn't make sense. That's why you lose trust. So that's why it's almost like it's cognitive bubble. Culture is a set of unwritten rules. Mm-hmm. You know what is rewarded, you know what you have to like in order to be accepted. So that can be the problem. If the gap between who you are and who you have to pretend to be in order to be accepted is too big, that's when we have problems. And this is what a lot of companies do as well, because they employ the best of the best from all over the world, hoping to create synergy by combining their skills. And in real life, that's not what happens, because they deliver only a fraction of the results they are capable of. And the top three reasons are clash of values, clash of personalities, and poor leadership.
Yes.
And all three of them stem from the same source, the lack of understanding of why people think and behave differently. So you can employ a lot of smart people, and then you teach them how to be normal. And that's what you call onboarding in a company. So you lose the power of diversity. You're asking for trouble. And that's why when we have clients and they ask me about diversity, I said, just, don't focus on diversity first. Focus on inclusion. Because chances are that your company is diverse already. The question is how inclusive you are. So aim for inclusion rather than diversity first.
Mm-hmm. And inclusion isn't the same as conformity.
Inclusion is when you can be yourself. So for example, I don't know if you heard about that kind of metaphor, that Diversity is when you're invited to a party, and inclusion is when you're asked to dance. And it sounds beautiful and spiritual, but I think it's missing one step, because if that happens, you invite me and then you ask me to dance with you, I would politely say, no, thank you. And it's not because of you. You're as inclusive as it gets, but because of the low self-esteem, because I don't have confidence in my dancing skills, I would say no. And if you look at this, this is almost an epidemic, the low self-esteem.
Mm-hmm.
So inclusion starts with accepting yourself. That's how you can make it sustainable. And a lot of people are struggling with this, especially because of social media. You look at other people's highlights, how they look, and you compare it to how you feel inside, and that's a big gap. So you lose more confidence. And the problem is that if you cannot accept yourself, you're not okay with yourself, then you're going to bully someone else to feel better. Then you're going to hide to feel safe. And that's a problem. So if that kind of psychological safety is missing from inside and in the company, then diversity can lead to a lot of problems.
So we need to look at inclusion with everyone being themselves, but we also have the other end that's individualized per person for them to feel okay. Now, is that something that the company is capable of doing?
It starts with us. I mean, when we start a workshop, then usually the leaders are really passionate about learning techniques to manage other people. And I say, no, just relax a bit, because day one is about you, because I promise you don't know a lot of things. And it's not even your fault. So let's start with you. So answering your question, step one is your own mindset. Because if you think about this, the easiest example is that imagine that you have a tiny, tiny piece of map of London and you try to find something in Prague. It's going to be difficult.
Yes.
But what if you listen to the motivational speakers and then you think positive and you try harder, then you get lost more quickly. So, people think, yeah, that's obvious. But the same process happens when you interact with someone, because we use a tiny piece of our own mental map. We talked about it, 5%. We assume it's 100%. And we also assume that other people have the same mental map. So now you can see why communication breaks down pretty much immediately.
Right.
And that's difficult. So first, let's get to know ourselves. And that's why assessments are important. But the question is, what kind of assessments? Because if you look at the psychometric assessments, like DISC and BTI, they explain how the different personality types tend to behave if they are not influenced by anyone or anything around them, which is pretty impossible. Because you can put different personality types in a team, and as a team, they work very similarly. So they conform to the norms.
Right.
That's the problem. So personality type is good, but your personality determines how you want to behave, and culture or your environment determines how you should, or technically how you have to behave.
Right.
So that's why they cannot be separated. So this is the problem of the psychometric assessments, that if it's situational or if it's incomplete, then it makes it difficult. Because if you don't have the right one, then it's almost like calling someone for directions when you're lost. And they ask you, so where are you exactly? Just don't worry about it. Just tell me how
to get there.
And that's difficult.
I use this example a lot, actually, like usually in terms of goals, having to know where you are in order to know where you want to go. But it's the same thing. If you don't know where you're at, no one can help you get to where you need to be, because, exactly. I need to get to 4th Street. Where are you? I don't know, but I need to get there. I don't know how to tell you how to get there. So I love this. Now, this is so interesting. And now I was actually part of a business that is exactly years ago what you were talking about, where we had literally the top of the top. We had like the best sales team, like top people in the industry. We had top marketing. We had a leader who was doing very well. I don't know if I'm in a place to say that she was the top, but doing very well. And everyone was completely different. And really this multi-million-dollar business completely broke down due to that the communication, the personalities, everything was just so clashing all the time. There was such animosity between different departments, and people were over here. And so I'm trying to see and understand, especially because I walked away definitely with a bad taste in my mouth for certain people, and trying to walk away and think about what you're saying, how I could grow from that and look at that situation differently, how that could have been saved.
Yeah.
Because the product was great, right? The reach was great. All these other pieces were great. Like the consumer was responding to it. Like all the pieces that should work were there.
Yeah.
You know, the right people, but it was exactly the people also that had it fell apart.
Exactly. And that's the point, that on paper, everything makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But in real life, when people need to interact, there's a problem.
Yeah.
And
I've had a relationship like that too.
Yeah, that's why you cannot to me, personal development and leadership development are pretty similar.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, you cannot be a better leader if you're not a better person.
Right.
And on the other side, you cannot be a good leader if you cannot lead yourself first.
Mm-hmm.
Because then other people are going to do that for you. And if you're not confident, you don't know who you are exactly, then you're going to overcompensate or you're going to do a bad job.
Yeah.
So excellent options. And that's why it's, according to research, 60 to 80% of all problems in a company stem from strained relationship between employees. It's not because they're not good enough, it's because they clash. 60 to 80%. But most companies focus on processes, technology. No, it's still about the people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's difficult. That's very difficult. When I work with BBC, for example, I did workshops for them. They had 17,000 people. And they said, oh, we celebrate and tolerate diversity. I said, that is fantastic. I mean, it's so much better than hating others. But if I want to turbocharge my car, I cannot just celebrate the engine. You know, it's not going to be enough. I have to understand how the different parts work together, and then I can optimize them. And that's how you create synergy, superior performance. But if you rely on common sense and good intention, it can majestically backfire. I know, because I lost that company and I lost a lot of people around me because I thought I was doing the right thing. But you know what? If you make a mistake, nobody cares, it's fine. But if you hurt other people around you who care about you, but you believe that you're doing the right thing for all of you, that is painful. That is horrible.
Yeah. Wow. So really a lot of what you're doing, which I can see in some cases could be an uphill battle, because these businesses, they want to jump on the bandwagon. They want to do what they've heard they should do, right? Diversity is a big buzzword, as we discussed, bringing everyone together, the big lofty mission statement. So here you are coming in and they're like, this guy's going to give us all the tips and the hacks for our leaders, and they're going to trickle it down to all the people and everything's going to work. And really what you're coming in and doing is saying, yeah, there's part of it, but really we're going to talk about you and who you are as a person. And you have all this science and stuff to back it up, but I can also see that initial feeling, they're probably like, well, this sounds woo-woo, like what did we hire a life coach for us? And there's like, what is that? So you come in and you've created kind of a systematic thing, like an assessment and something, right? To really make this real for them, right? Can you tell us a little bit about the process and what you do?
So the first problem is that a lot of companies focus on the visible layer of diversity, such as identity differences like gender, generation, nationality, because this is what they read about. Diversity is good for the business. Well, not really, because that means that you have a lot of people with different perspectives. And if there's no safety, there's no inclusion, then you're going to clash. So technically you're asking for a lot of problems. And then sometimes they have the quota that we need 50% men, 50% women. And then it's going to be a fantastic picture on the website. But forcing diversity at the expense of the existing members of the team is going to create a lot of frustration. Nobody should have more or less rights. And I'm not talking about these cultural groups that they are not important, not at all. I'm talking about that there's more to it. There's a deeper layer, and that is cognitive diversity. And this is what they don't really talk about, because I could give you all the parts for an airplane, but if you don't know how to put it together, then you might think, airplanes don't fly. Well, that wasn't the problem. And that's the thing with diversity. We focus on cognitive diversity, because the example that you described was really good in terms of clashing perspectives. But there's a different one as well, which is the exact opposite. That on the surface, it's really colorful, lots of different identity differences, but deep inside, they're all the same. They think the same way, they see the world the same way. So their blind spot is huge. And that's even more dangerous, because imagine that you have a board meeting and there are 10 directors and everybody agrees with you. Then it feels right, but it doesn't make it true.
Right.
And since the year 2000, more than 50% of Fortune 500 companies disappeared. So size is not a guarantee. It's all about the ICQ mindset. And, there are a lot of fancy definitions, but mine is, I try to make it practical. that you are able to see the same situation from different perspectives so you can make a better decision. And you can choose to respond instead of just reacting. And you can see, we never mentioned countries or anything like that, because it happens in everyday life, even in your family.
Yes.
So the topic is about cognitive and behavioral flexibility. So just knowing about things is not enough.
Definitely.
Because you go back to normal, like you explained it, that habits are not changing. That's difficult.
Yeah.
But if you understand, for example, we have a disagreement. And even if you disagree with it, but if you understand my logic, because I can explain it to you, you might think, okay, maybe that makes sense. I don't have to agree with it, but I can respect it at least. Or maybe I can learn something from it. So instead of thinking who is right or wrong, let's see how we could combine this knowledge. So for example, when somebody completes an assessment, the global disc one, and they ask me, so what advice would you give me? I said, nothing. There's no advice. I mean, one report is not better than the other one. Give me another report, give me a context, I can tell you a lot. But one is not better than the other one. And this is the point, that cultural differences are clashes of common sense. And then if you approach it from this angle, it becomes much more friendly. And you can work on yourself first. Because the more you understand yourself, and then the more you understand other people, the more trust you can enable in a team. So that's what happens in a company. First, we learn about you, and that's your own mindset. And then we learn about a range of different common senses, the blueprint of why people think and behave differently. So they become familiar and predictable to you. So this is what we trust, people like us, what is familiar and predictable to us. So the more you understand yourself, the more you understand them, the more trust and psychological safety you have. And then if you have that, you can get along with people, and then you can get ahead.
Yeah.
Because there's no shortcut here, especially on the top, because everybody is smart officially. What makes a difference is people skills, how you make them feel.
Yes. Yes.
Not how smart you are.
Right. Well, and being able to like ask those questions, you know, maybe he has a point, maybe how can I see this from where he's seeing this? That itself is a skill. It's not something we've already discussed over and over. Like, it's not our normal inclination. It's certainly not what has been molded or gathered through our experiences or society. If anything, it's just been reinforced with that self-protection, because it's biological, and then it's societal, you know, around us. So you're bringing this new concept. They get new knowledge, but through doing the assessment, right? There's some sort of kind of self-awareness through this assessment. And then after that, it's really about taking that awareness and putting it into practice until it becomes a skill. And once it becomes a skill, and you're starting to learn for your knee-jerk reaction to be, let me see where this person's coming from. How can I see it in these other ways? Then we're learning, we can really be successful. We're learning to work as a team. All this great talent can actually be used, and the benefits of diversity, which are there. But like you said, the downside or the potential clash of this diversity is also, we have so many different people with different thought processes. It can be a recipe for disaster. But the goal is that all this the diverse people, they bring different perspectives. But if, like you said, I'm pulling it all together. So if they have these different perspectives, but they're in a situation that asks them to conform to a norm, we don't get the benefits of that. So when in this situation, becoming with this awareness, learning this skill, you're really creating like this super turbo funnel of like people being able to take all these benefits that we've been striving for into reality. And it starts with knowing ourselves.
Exactly, because diversity is cool until somebody disagrees with you.
Right.
Then we don't like it that much.
Right.
But the problem is,
then we wish everyone was the same.
But that's not very diverse. And that's why it's easier to focus on the visible layer of diversity. So you look different to me, but you agree with me, so we're cool.
Right.
But if you look identical to me, but you disagree with me, then I don't need this hassle. So I would rather talk to someone else. That's why cognitive diversity is so important.
Yes.
Because when somebody disagrees with you, it's like they grab you and they just grab you out of your comfort zone, and then people start panicking. And that's why you start protecting yourself, because you're in survival mode immediately. Because if you say something that it's part of your identity, you say it because you believe in it. So if I question that, it's almost like questioning you as a person. So people get defensive. And when you get defensive, then, and you are in survival mode, you fight, or you just close down and then freeze. Well, that's not an inclusive state of mind, because when the tiger is chasing you, you don't have to be inclusive, you have to be quick, and you have to be strong. And you just revert back to your natural style, you amplify it, and then you try to protect yourself. Right. And that's why psychological safety is so important. But again, just because you take an assessment, and even if we have an amazing workshop, it's not going to change anything. It's not the silver bullet. Because changing habits is difficult.
Yes.
So that's why we created something which is called the Quest. So it's a 3-month interactive coaching platform, and it's designed for your global disc result. So you take the result, you learn about yourself, which is great, but that's not going to change anything. Information doesn't lead to transformation.
No, if it did, I would have 6-pack abs already. So that's not,
exactly.
I know how to get them, just haven't done the work.
Yeah, and then, to be honest, I published an article about this, and the title was Intellectual Obesity. And that's exactly about this, that we need more and more courses, just another book, just another qualification. But putting that into practice, no, because then there's a chance that you make a mistake. But you cannot make a mistake in gathering information. So our head is expanding, but we are too scared to do something. But at the same time, we get the dopamine hit that, we made progress, we're good, we just need one more course. Well, not really. That's the intellectual obesity. That's a different story.
I love that. Yeah. So I'm sure there's a lot of people can resonate with that race. We've been, I just need one more thing, then I might know enough to take action. Nope, that's not happening.
One more. But it's just
We're
one
just
more.
getting head fat, guys. We're just getting head fat.
And that's the point. But when we created this quest, then we wanted people to experience it, because the different personality types have different values and different needs. So this is not an online course. It's not a boring thing that you can just click through. No. Everything happens in real life. You interact with real people. You do what you normally do, but you would do it slightly differently. So there are 3 levels: piece of cake, pushing the limits, and panic. And on each level, you have 7 missions. And each mission is going to push you out of your comfort zone just a little bit more, step by step.
This is
because people learn from experience, not from theories. So you do something, you get a different outcome, a different feeling. Then you go back to the app, you have some reflective questions, some tips, and then you can unlock the next one. So by the time you finish with mission 21 after 3 months, then your behavioral flexibility is going to be pretty awesome. And this is the point.
Amazing. And that's why it's called a quest.
Yes, because it's not about changing people, because when you tell someone or a company to change, it implies that they are not good enough. I mean, that's not a good start already. Right. So, we don't do that. We tell them the exact opposite, that you're awesome, but you're capable of so much more. Right. And we help you unlock that. But that's what's important, that it's designed for your result, because if you get the wrong one, then it can push you out of your comfort zone too quick, and you think, I don't need this hassle.
Right. You have to take those little baby steps. So this is amazing. So we learn about ourselves. We take this assessment. We kind of figure it out. First of all, guys, if you're listening here, all of these amazing, just like truth bombs and like how our head works and how we're connecting as humans, and then we put ourselves into this business situation. All of this is fascinating and on its own right. Then we look at our own lives and how this affects us for, whether you have a big business or you have a ton of employees, or you have your VA that you need to communicate with, or you have, the digital printer guy, or you're making a phone call, for something. So understanding all of this and how we're different and how to communicate, this is going to affect your success in all of those areas, in all of these things as a human, as I joked earlier, just talking with my own parents, like we just went through the holidays not that long ago. So even going through, family dinners, guys, like this can help you there. So these are the concepts in general, but what Csaba has done is created an assessment that doesn't only focus on personality, it focuses on the 2 areas, right? Personality and like environment as well, right?
Yes, because the underlying values and drivers are exactly the same. And that's what we can measure. And because everything is relative, everything is compared to you, your preferences.
Right.
So I can say that you're a nice person, but compared to whom? Me? Yes. Other one? Maybe not.
Right. I'm like, we'll see. So we have this, you take this assessment, you kind of figure out who you are a bit, but like Csaba said, that's not enough. And I've said it enough, tons of times. It's all about action. Knowledge is nothing without action. Once knowledge plus action, you actually have wisdom. That's when it becomes real. That's when something you walk away with. So you've learned this thing, you've taken this great assessment. You're like, wow, look at this. This is who I am. This is the type of potato I am, whatever. And then that's not enough. So the next step is to not take a course. And I love this. It's not a course. It's not just chapters I'm reading or something. They're challenges. They're actual things to put these things into action, to test it out, to get the experience of it. Because that experience, as I just said, create is the wisdom of it. That's what solidifies it to your being, becomes part of you because it's now your experience, right? And that becomes part of that mental map as well that you can pull from because you're now expanding that map. So you go on this 3-month quest. I love that it's called a quest. And from there, you have to have some changes because you've just experienced something new. Like it's foolproof, really. As long as you do it, there will be change because that's how life is. This is brilliant. I love this. It's so amazing.
I mean, this is the theory, but let's be honest. Most people don't do anything until it hurts enough.
That's true.
So really smart people learn from other people's mistakes, and hopefully your listeners are different. And that's the point, that the opportunity is there. But most people, get by, it's fine now. Or they just accept something as normal and they don't believe that it could be so much better.
Right.
Which is a challenge. But learning is emotional. And this is the point. That's why you have to experience something. So when you do a workshop or you're coaching, and if the other person is not uncomfortable, then they are not learning and you're not teaching. Nothing goes in when you're on autopilot. Learning is emotional. It can be positive or negative, but if there's nothing there, people don't learn. So that's why we have to do it interactive. And sometimes we do really weird stuff just to shock people and they think, "Ooh, what just happened?" And that's when they pay attention.
Right.
Because if you look at the chemical reactions in your body, then homeostasis is important. Your body doesn't like changes. So when something changes, that because something happens, then suddenly it pays attention, takes a snapshot, and that's a memory. Because wants to understand what happened.
Yeah.
That's how you remember things. But when everything is normal, then no, you just dismiss everything that is not consistent with your beliefs.
Yeah. This is, I love this. Thank you so much. Now, Csaba, before my last question, can you please tell everyone where they can find you, where they can find this assessment, everything you have going on? Please let them know.
The easiest option is the website, ICQ.global. So it's ICQ.global. And also the book is out very soon. And the title is Uncommon Sense in Unusual Times. And it's a hybrid book. So technically there are 14 chapters. You read a chapter and there is a specifically designed quest for each chapter. So you read the book, that's the information, and then you experience it. So it's not a book and online course, it's a hybrid one because they build on each other. It's fully integrated.
Real time. Love it.
If you get that book, then it includes also the assessment.
Okay.
When you get that point. And there's also a global growth mindset certificate at the end. So we try to give as much value as possible because it's not about competing on price, it's about competing on value. Yes. And that's an investment in people.
Oh, I love it. You guys, okay, get this book, which you heard, it has the assessment, has the quest, has a certification, like, hello, everything there. This is a no-brainer. Well, so now for my last question. What is one thing that a business owner can do as soon as this week to help their business, to help themselves in this area?
I think the easiest thing to do, or technically the most simple, but maybe not easy, is to practice. So next time that you have a disagreement, especially in your family, just ask why. Why do you think you're right? Just
why do you think
that
you're
simple. Right? And you might be surprised.
Why do you think you're right?
Yeah. But not in a sarcastic way, because, when you hear it from your parents.
Why do you think you're right? No, that's a great question. I love that. I'm going to put that on my wall or something. I love it. Well, thank you so much. I mean, that has been amazing. Honestly, Csaba, thank you so much for being here today. I have learned so much. Business owners, everyone, this is so much an often overlooked but crucial area to support the growth and sustainability of your business, but also of interpersonal connection and relationships. Like, this is huge. I mean, we call this a business edition, but Csaba, really, I believe that this, as you know, this goes over all areas. So we're going to share this on both platforms because it's so us, because it starts with us as humans, and then it bleeds into whatever we're doing, and in this case, business, right? So you guys, I encourage you to go check out this book and check out this mission, this quest. And if you do, when you do, tag us at My Design Life Show and let us know what you learned. As always, I love connecting with all of you on Instagram and Facebook at My Design Life Show. And you can always follow me at Tanyamfk and learn about all our workshops, retreats, and programs at tanyamfk.com. If you like this episode and you'd like to see more, make sure to click that subscribe button to be notified of our next show. Remember, your someday starts today. Make it the best. I'm Tanyamfk, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us. You can catch us every week at 1 p.m. EST live on the My Design Life Show Facebook page and on YouTube at the Tanyamfk channel. See how the challenges go by following us on Facebook and Instagram at My Design Life Show and at Tanyamfk. Do you have a method, tip, or hack you'd like to share or explore? Submit to be a guest or suggest a topic by visiting mydesignlife.show.